Alright, this video is going to talk about the least common multiple, and what I'm seeing is that sometimes it's easy to get the least common multiple confused with the greatest common factor. So we really need to think about what each of those terms or phrases mean, so that we can really be able to tell them apart and understand when we need to use each of them, okay? So let's review real quick. When we're finding the greatest common factor, I'm going to abbreviate and say GCF. We use that to simplify or compose simpler or larger fractions, okay? So for example, in our last video on the greatest common factor, we found the greatest common factor between 8 and 12 so that we could divide both of these. These are in this, these numbers 8 and 12 are in the same fraction, okay? So we used the greatest common factor, which was 4, to simplify this one fraction to its simplest form, okay? So 8 divided by 4 was 2, or is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3, okay? So again, we used the greatest common factor to simplify one fraction, okay? The least common multiple, which we will abbreviate LCM, okay? Multiple is another word for a product, okay? So whereas we had 3 times 4, for example, those were our factors, we said 12 was the product of 3 times 4. 12 is also a multiple of either 3 or 4, okay? So let's see how the least common multiple can help us with fractions. Okay, so when we're using the least common multiple, we've been using it to help us when we're dealing with more than one fraction, okay? So say, for example, we have 3/5 and 2/3, and we are not sure just by looking at these two fractions in their number form which one is larger, which one is smaller. Maybe they're equal. We're not sure. And remember, we can't always rely on our own pictures or diagrams, okay? So that's why we start getting into using math and tools like the least common multiple to help us, okay? So multiples, let's start with multiples of 3. I'm just going to list some, and then we'll compare those to multiples of 5, okay? So multiples of 3 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and we'll go ahead and stop here at 21, okay? Multiples of 5 would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and we'll stop at 30, okay? Now, the least common multiple, let's see, remember we're looking for the LCM, least common multiple, means we want the lowest number that's the same between these two lists of multiples, okay? So let's see, these are not common, 6 and 10 are not common or the same. Well, let's see, 9, no, 12, no, oh, 15 is the least or the lowest number. That is a multiple of both 5 and 3. So we're going to remember our least common multiple then is 15, and we found it simply by listing the multiples of our two different denominators, okay? So our least common multiple is 15, okay? So now we're going to use that to compare these fractions, or we're going to use the least common multiple to help us compare these fractions, okay? So we want to turn both of these fractions into 15ths so that we can see which is greater. So if I want to make 3/5 into 15ths, then I'm going to have 3/5, and to get 5 to 15ths, I know I have to multiply by 3. And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, or the other way around. So when I multiply 3/5 by 3 over 3, I can see that 3 times 3 is 9, and 5 times 3, of course, is 15. Okay, so now 2/3. Now I have to think, how can I make my thirds into 15ths? Well, I have to multiply by 5. Okay, so I know 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5, of course, is 15. So now, if 3/5 is equivalent to 9/15ths, and 2/3 is equivalent to 10/15ths, that helps me to know that 2/3 is actually greater than 3/5, because if we use our least common multiple to find common or the same denominators, I can see that 3/5 will give me 9/15ths, 2/3 is the same as 10/15ths, and 10/15ths is greater than 9/15ths, so 2/3 is greater than 3/5.